Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Josh and you're watching Our History. Today we're going over the life of King Sekhukhune, who was the paramount king of the Marota or Bapedi people from 1861 until his assassination in 1882. So if you enjoy this, please be sure to like, and if you're new here, consider smashing the subscribe button. If this isn't your first rodeo and you haven't shown some love to that subscribe, now is your opportunity. Thank you for watching. King Sekhukhune. Sekhukhune I, also known as Matsebe, was the paramount king of the Marota or Bapedi people from 1861 until his assassination in 1882. During his reign, he faced numerous political challenges from the Voortrekkers, who were the Boer settlers, as well as the independent South Africa Republic and the British Empire. Additionally, Sekhukhune I had to navigate significant social change brought about by the presence of Christian missionaries in the region. His assassination was carried out by his half-brother and rival, Mampuru II. Sekhukhune I's reign marked a period of significant conflict and change for the Bapedi people. After the passing of his father, King Sekhukhune I, on September 20th, 1861, Sekhukhune became the rightful ruler of the Bapedi people. In order to secure his position, he successfully defended his throne against his half-brother Mampuru II with the assistance of his Matsuba regiment. Despite his victory, Sekhukhune adhered to the Marota tradition and allowed Mampuru to peacefully leave the Bapedi territory. He married Legoadi IV in 1862 and resided on a fortified mountain called Taba Leola or Leolo Mountains. To protect his kingdom from European colonization, Sekhukhune had his young subjects work at the white mines and on farms, using their earnings to purchase weapons from the Portuguese in Delgoa Bay and acquire livestock. Sekhukhune took part in two significant wars during the late 19th century. The first war, successfully fought in 1876, saw him and his forces battling against the ZAR and their allies from the Swazi tribe. However, the Second War, which took place in 1879, became known as the Sekhukhune Wars and did not yield favorable outcomes. This time, Sekhukhune faced opposition from both the British and the Swazi. After the conflict, Sekhukhune was detained in Pretoria until 1881. Following his release and return to his kingdom, tragedy struck in 1882 where he was fatally stabbed by an assassin at Manoge. It is widely believed that his own brother and competitor, Mampuru II, sent the assassins. Early life. Sekhukhune, born in 1814 to King Sekhukhune and Toromenchane Pala, became a revered figure for the Pedi people. His birth, initially inconspicuous, gained significance as he emerged as a symbol of pride and courage. Originally known as Matsebe, he earned the nickname Sekhukhune due to his remarkable involvement in battles against the Boers. This new name gradually replaced his birth name and became synonymous with his extraordinary achievements and leadership during conflicts with the Boers. Sekhukhune's legacy remained deeply entwined with Pedi history, leaving an indelible mark on their collective identity. His contributions continued to be remembered and celebrated to this day. The Sekhukhune Wars. First Sekhukhune War. On May 16, 1876, President Thomas Francois Burgers of the South African Republic or Transvaal initiated a conflict against Sekhukhune and the Bapedi. 2 months later, on July 14th, an impi, a group of warriors from the Swazi tribe, launched an attack on a fortified Bapedi settlement. Despite the defense efforts led by Johannes Dekoanyane, Sekhukhune's half-brother, the Swazi warriors were successful in overwhelming the settlement. It had been reported that the Swazi massacred the inhabitants, including women and children, and committed brutal acts such as dashing their brains against rocks. Johannes Dekoane, although wounded, survived the assault but succumbed to his injuries on July 16, 1876. His dying words expressed gratitude for not being killed by the Boers, but rather by a courageous black nation like himself, and he instructed his brother to study the Bible before passing away. In 1876, the Swazi, feeling angered by what they saw as the Boers' lack of bravery, decided to abandon the front and return home. This action left Sekhukhune with an opportunity to defeat the Transvaal army, which he successfully accomplished on the 2nd of August 1876. Following this defeat, the Boers, led by President Burgers, retreated. Despite his appeal that he would rather face being shot than witness his men deserting him, Burgers had to join the Boer retreat to Steelpoort. At Steelpoort, the Boers constructed a fort called Krugerpoort, solidifying their defensive possession. On September the 4th, 1876, President Thomas Francois Burgers proposed a plan to the Volksraad regarding the hiring of mercenary services to counter the Bapedi tribe led by Sekhukhune. The Volksraad approved this scheme and subsequently hired the Leidenberg Volunteer Corps, a group commanded by Konrad van Schlickman, a former Prussian soldier turned mercenary. It is believed that von Schlickman had strong connections to the German establishment and had previously fought alongside Otto von Bismarck in the Franco-Prussian War. The Leidenberg Volunteer Corps was a group primarily composed of European immigrants who were recruited at the Griqualand West Diamond Fields. The recruits came from various countries including America, Britain, Ireland, France, Germany, Austria, and others. Instead of receiving a salary or supplies from the Volksraad, the volunteers were given promissory notes and the promise of receiving 2,000 acres of land in Sekhukhune's territory. It is worth noting that the volunteers were expected to sustain themselves by taking whatever they could from the native, and as a result, the Leidenberg Volunteer Corps gained a reputation for being brutal in their actions. In a dispatch to Lord Carnarvon on the 18th of December 1876, Sir Henry Berkeley conveyed a disturbing incident involving the Leidenberg Volunteer Corps and Konrad van Schlickman. It was reported that the corps had kidnapped 2 women and a child near a native settlement in Steelpoort. However, a letter from one of the volunteers revealed that there were initially 3 women and the child was in fact a baby. Despite objections from the letter's author, von Schlickman's mercenaries fired upon the group, fatally injuring 1 woman, and subsequently took the remaining 2 women and the baby hostage. Konrad van Schlickman led an expedition that resulted in a brutal raid and massacre of the native settlement nearby. It is highly likely that the settlement was the same one from which the captives were previously kidnapped. The Leidenberg Volunteer Corps, under von Schlickman's command, reportedly showed no mercy and instead chose to kill any survivors by slitting their necks. However, von Schlickman himself was killed during a Bapedi ambush on the 17th of November that year. Despite this setback, the Bapedi were ultimately repulsed. Following von Schlickman's death, the leadership of the Leidenberg Volunteer Corps was assumed by Alfred Aylward, a Fenian rebel. During the Boer War, Sir Henry Berkeley reported on simultaneous war crimes committed by Abel Erasmus, the field cornet of Krugerpoort. In October 1876, Erasmus was accused of killing around 40 to 50 friendly native men and women and abducting their children. This incident highlighted a breach of the anti-slavery provisions of the Sand River Convention, which was not the first instance of such violations by some Boers. Despite the native people fleeing from their settlement upon seeing Erasmus's commando, they were pursued and brutally murdered. While some victims were shot by the Boers, it is worth noting that Erasmus had allied natives with assegais who reportedly carried out a significant portion of the killings. The native allies, referred to as Boer Kaffers, were potentially Swazi forces loyal to the Boers and/or Bapedi forces loyal to Chief Mampuru. These allies were involved in the massacre and kidnapping witnessed by a Boer who had accompanied the Krugerpoort commando. In response to these crimes, the Boer informant reported that the incidents to Sir Henry Berkeley. Berkeley in turn protested these allegations by writing to President Thomas Francois Burgers and urging him to take action against the Boer war criminals. On 16th of February 1877, a peace treaty was signed in Botshabelo between the Boers and Bapedi, with the mediation of Alexander Merensky. This treaty was a result of the Boers' unsuccessful attempts to subdue Sekhukhune and the Bapedi. As a consequence, President Thomas Burgers was replaced by Paul Kruger. Furthermore, on the 12th of April 1877, Sir Theophilus Shepstone, the Secretary for Native Affairs of Natal, took the decision to annex the South African Republic, or the Transvaal, on behalf of the British government. Second Sekhukhune War. The Transvaal War against Sekhukhune was initially condemned by the British. However, it continued after the annexation. The British made 3 unsuccessful attempts to attack Sekhukhune in 1878 and 1879. It was Sir Garnet Wolseley who ultimately defeated Sekhukhune on November 1879. Wolseley led an army comprised of 2,000 British soldiers, Boers, and 10,000 Swazis. On the 2nd of December 1879, Sekhukhune was captured and subsequently imprisoned in Pretoria on the 9th of December 1879. The aftermath. On the 3rd of August 1881, the Pretoria Convention was signed, and a significant event that resulted in the release of Sekhukhune. Article 23 of the convention stipulated his liberation. However, due to destruction of his capital, Sekhukhune was forced to relocate to a place named Manoge. Tragically, on the 13th of August 1882, Sekhukhune met his untimely demise at the hands of his half-brother, Mampuru II. Mampuru claimed the title of lawful king, but was later apprehended by the Boers. Subsequently, Mampuru was put on trial for murder and ultimately executed by hanging in Pretoria on the 21st of November 1883. Assassination of Sekhukhune and the decline of the Marota Empire. On the night of the 13th of August 1882, Sekhukhune, the ruler of the Bapedi kingdom, was assassinated by Mampuru. Mampuru claimed that he, not Sekhukhune, was the rightful king and accused his brother of taking the throne after their father's death. Feeling threatened, Mampuru fled and sought refuge with Chief Marishane and later Nyabela, the Ndebele king. When the Boers in Pretoria demanded that Nyabela surrender Mampuru for trial on murder charges, Nyabela refused, stating that Mampuru was under his protection. This led to a 9-month war between Nyabela and the Boers, which ended with Nyabela's surrender and Mampuru being handed over to the Boers for trial in Pretoria Supreme Court. On the 23rd of January 1884, Marishane, who had provided temporary refuge to Mampuru and incited unrest, was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment. After his release, Marishane returned to his village, Marishane, in Mooifontein, and eventually passed away there. Nyabela, on the other hand, originally received a death sentence, but it was later commuted to life imprisonment on 22nd of September 1883. Mampuru, who was convicted of murder and rebellion, was hanged in Pretoria prison on the 18th of November 1883. This marked the end of the Marota Empire. Legacy. After the death of Sekhukhune, the Bapedi kingdom was divided into smaller units led by native commissioners. However, his grandson Sekhukhune II sought to revive the Bapedi kingdom and waged an unsuccessful war against the South African Republic. This defeat marked the end of the Bapedi resistance against foreign forces. Interestingly, the London Times, which generally did not report on deaths of African leaders at the time, published an article on the 30th of August 1882 recognizing Bapedi's resistance against the Boers and the British. We hear this morning of the death of one of the bravest of our former enemies, the Chief Sekhukhune. The news carries us some years back to the time when the name of Sekhukhune was a name of dread, first to the Dutch and then to the English colonists of the Transvaal and Natal. The London Times. Sekhukhune, first leader of the Bapedi people, left a lasting legacy in Limpopo province of South Africa. In recognition of his influence and leadership, the Sekhukhune district municipality was named after him in 2000. This region, also referred to as Sekhukhune land, is rich in history and cultural heritage. Sekhukhune I, besides his heir Moramoche II, had numerous other children, including Seraki, Khobalale, Kwerane, Khechepe, Morutane, and several others who tragically lost their lives in battle. If you enjoy this channel and would like to support more content like this, because all contributions are greatly appreciated, please check out the Patreon link in the description below.